There we go. Okay. Welcome everyone to our webinar. We are going to talk about all kinds of good stuff. Mainly, we are talking about executive function and a really easy way to make routines easier for you. So I am Sarah Kesty. I host the Executive Function podcast and the IEP OMG show. Basically, I've funneled my 20 years of being a special educator into bite-sized pieces of information that can help smooth out life if you have executive function things going on. And my moderator is Angela Barnett, who will introduce herself too.
Hello, I am Angela, and I am an elementary school teacher. I've been in education for about 20-ish years. I focus on educational technology, and another passion of mine is social emotional learning. And Sarah and I actually met each other at an EdTech conference. So we are so happy, and I'm happy to be with Sarah and just help moderate tonight's session.
It will be awesome. Okay, and I appreciate people jumping in and introducing themselves as well. That was really helpful for me to kind of know. Oh, from Indiana at 6 a.m. I absolutely understand. Go do your thing, but we're here when you're ready. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get moving. There we go. Okay. Let's from the beginning. Woohoo. Okay, look at that. We took care of business already. So we are talking about studenting hacks. So we are going to figure out where are the freebie spots where we can make things easier for you without any less work. I'm trying to sell it to you because I know kids are listening too. Okay, why should you listen to me? Because I was never the typical teacher that was like, do your job. I always loved the outside of the box thinkers, the kids who maybe had a little bit of a tricky time. And so I brought all of that information plus a whole bunch of research that I did into what I do now, which is coaching and advocacy. I also wrote a book called Everyone Has Something, which is a children's book, but I've really found that grown-ups secretly love it too. And it's about just the journeys we're all on and how we all kind of have a something. And one of my somethings is that I have a disease called Charcot-Marie tooth, which is not with your teeth. It's French scientists that named it a long, long time ago. And what it does in my body is it kills the covering on my nerves and makes my nerves die, which then makes my body funky. So I've had 15 surgeries on my right foot, and I definitely understand what you're going through when you say, I am giving it my best. I don't know why this is so hard. And sometimes some things are in our bodies. Sometimes some things are in the situation we live in. Sometimes some things are in our brains, and we have amazing intelligence and then wonky executive function where like, how come I can answer all this out loud, but then I try to put it on paper and poof, right? So that's where I'm coming from. And that's why this is worth a listen, because I promise you, I will not waste your time. And at the end of this, you will have a plan, and grown-ups, you can steal some strategies too. But you will have a plan to smooth out those bumpy spots in life that seem like it's every single time. That's what we're working on today. And by the way, in the chat, you are absolutely encouraged to write anything that doesn't make sense. If you have a connection, something like that, keep it going. You don't have to wait for me to ask, and you certainly don't have to wait for like a good time to interrupt, because our preference is that you speak up when you need that help, and then we can help clarify in the moment so that you don't feel like you fell behind. Okay, so just quickly, I don't know why, Angela, the camera loves you. It keeps, I'm like trying to minimize it, and it's like, we're going to stare at Mrs. Barnett. Okay, well, I hope that this kind of works for the recording. We're gonna go with it. Okay, not that you're not lovely to stare at, but it's a large box when it's both of us. Um, so how do you make the most of your time, right? Like, I do not want this to feel like school 2.0, where you're like, oh man, this again. So my very first challenge for you is to self-regulate for your energy and attention. And what that means is monitor where you are. Do I need to move? Do I need to kind of calm myself? Whatever you need, now's your chance to practice kind of test running some strategies, because I can't see you. So you get to feel what it feels like to learn from a teacher, but test run what works for your body and your attention. It's also helpful right now if you have something to write on, but if you have the type of brain that likes to just sponge it up and kind of chew on it, you'll have some ways to interact with this again, because you can watch the recording. And at the end, we have some worksheets for you to go through. Well, I shouldn't say worksheets because that sounds terrible. We have some planning sheets that are yours to use. And I've got some strategies if you hate planning sheets. So again, we're going to make this way more executive function and neurodivergent brain friendly. Okay, if you're not live and you're watching this as a recording, make a promise to yourself that you'll watch the whole thing. I know it's really easy to get juiced about something, watch about 10 minutes and then kind of lose interest, but something in you found value in this. So if you need to chunk it and watch it in 15-minute chunks, because that's how you learn, absolutely fine, but plan it out and schedule it so that you do meet that promise for yourself, because you signed up, you find value in this. Okay. And then the very last thing is to remember to talk to your brain janitors tonight. And what I mean is you have a lymphatic system in your body that gets rid of toxins, things you don't need. Well, researchers are finding that you have a similar system in your brain called the glymphatic system. It sounds made up, doesn't it? But it's where your brain goes through and kind of cleans up the clutter. Like, you don't need to hold on to what you had for lunch or the color of your best friend's shirt today. So those things kind of get cleaned up while you sleep. And then when you wake up, hopefully you got refreshing sleep, your brain's a little more clear. Here's the tricky part. Your brain janitors really want to do a good job, and sometimes they clean up things that you actually need. So the way that you talk to your system is to value tag things you want to remember. So like put an emotion with it or look at it at night. And when you look at it at night, that's a way to talk to your brain to say, please don't erase this. So tonight, before you go to sleep, talk about what you learned today. And then you can steal that strategy and try it for tests too. So long as studying at night doesn't make you too upset or worried. So self-monitor. Remember, whatever I'm giving you are tools, not have-tos. Oops. This is where I think I'm clicking and I'm not. Okay, everybody, here's what we're going to do. I have 3 hacks for you, and then we have an action. So it's going to be a little bit of talk time, and then some time where we're actually going to get work done together, and I'll be here live to answer questions. So student hack number 1 is teachers love routines. We do. It's actually kind of hard for teacher brains to like have something that throws you off, because then you're like, oh no, what do I do? And how do I do this? Like, I know when the bells are, I know when recess is. It's very predictable at schools. So teachers love routines can be hard for a brain with neurodivergence. And there's an opportunity there. So I'm going to teach you that. Second thing is routines save you time, which hello, then you get more time for fun. Third student hack is routines save you brain space. So again, more brain space for fun. I'm down. That sounds good. And then when we are done, we're going to figure out your routine, your either close the day, open the day, or even looking at your class routines and think, how can I game the system so that I get as many points as possible or as much success studenting as I can without putting in very much work? Well, pause. It's brain work, but it's not extra work, because I'm going to prove to you why right now you're doing work you don't need to do, stressing out and stuff. Okay. I sure hope that made sense. That was very bumbly. And I'm going to pause right now to let you know that routines you may have heard about, like, oh, have your morning routine. Like, there's a lot of information about that. This is different. This is just kind of smoothing out how you do things. So if routines, the word has a bit too much emotional charge to it, let's call it flow. Basically, what we're going to do today is figure out how to make the things that you do almost every day go smoother so that you have more success, less stress, and more time. No one likes to put in overtime. Yes, especially when it's like wasted brain space. All right, here's hack number 1. Teachers love routines. So here's the deal, my loves. Actually, I'm going to go backwards because that's kind of overwhelming. Teachers love routines. And sometimes this is tricky because part of the routine is a little bit scary for our brains, or it feels unpredictable, even though to the teacher it seems pretty predictable. So there's conflict here sometimes, but when your brain can see the patterns, when you can kind of zoom out and watch and say, oh, okay, my teacher that expects every day when I come in, I hang up my backpack, grab my binder, sit down. Then you can start training your brain, backpack, binder, sit. And then there's fewer reminders from your teacher, because you know how they get like more and more irritated, like, hey, Brandon, please do that. Brandon, please, Brandon, the changes. We want to eliminate that. And we also want to save brain space for you, because when the things that are on repeat are still kind of tricky, what happens is you waste a whole bunch of brain energy on just getting to your seat. And then your teacher wants you to do the math warm-up problem. What? So we're going to smooth out that part so that your brain's available for studenting. So how do we do that? Well, we zoom out and we look at what are the patterns in my teacher's expectations, in the day, in the routines, all of those things where we can match what we notice with some strategies. So a lot of teachers time their tests, and they schedule their tests pretty regularly. And a whole bunch of teachers love Fridays for tests because you have the whole week to teach and then check you out. We're going to see what you learned this week. Sometimes it's every other Friday. Sometimes it's every Friday. But if you can find that pattern, that means that you can plan the little chunks of studying you want to do to get ready for that test, rather than having it be the Thursday night hullabaloo where you're up till midnight because, oh no, there's a test on Friday. Sometimes when we study in those little chunks, it actually helps us learn better than if we do it all at once. So that's just an example. If your pattern isn't Fridays, that's okay. But the idea here is you're looking for routines and then thinking, okay, if this is kind of rules of the game, then what does my character need to bring for their armor? What does my character need to do? Like, when is the cactus going to pop out and poke my character, and how do I avoid that? That kind of thinking when you play games works at school too. You can look at, okay, what can I expect? And how can I play the game based on what I've noticed? So when I'm looking at this, I just did some examples. There are other areas where teachers have routines, but the idea is, again, to make this your own. So at the end, when we do the Google Doc that we have available for you, just a thinking sheet, it will have a section where you can start kind of hacking your own routine and matching up. Okay, if this is how I played school here, if this is how I play the game of Mrs. Martin's math class, then here are the strategies I'm going to use. And if you have a brain that kind of has had a hard time at school, gamifying it, kind of making it fun and like, ooh, what could I try? Will change the chemicals in your brain. It's like doing non-invasive brain surgery. And you're going to get more dopamine. You're going to feel more excited about school. And then dopamine's a magic ingredient that helps make norepinephrine, which is focus juice. Isn't that cool? So when you can gamify it, when you can kind of find ways to make it fun and detective work, it's easier to focus at school. Who knew? What questions do you have about hack number 1, teachers love routines?
I don't see anything in the chat box yet. But if anybody feels that they want to add any.
All good. And I'll offer this. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Like sometimes your brain will cook up a question later. And if that happens, you're still welcome to ask. If I'm 5 slides later, you're still welcome to ask. It's absolutely fine. No shame in the help game.
Okay, so I do have one. What can I do with a strict teacher?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so if it's a strict teacher, you know that there's not a lot of flexibility. So you're going to have to figure out what are the big things that your teacher will absolutely not bend on, like due dates or interrupting, or, you know, teachers have funny things. They all have like a different list of like, no way. And then they might have a list of like, I don't like it, but I don't hate it. And if they're strict, that's probably all they have. So start thinking about, what do I absolutely need to do to win this game? And then backwards, some strategies that might help you get there. And I can offer you this as well. Honor that you're not broken because you're in a situation where you feel like clashed with a teacher. A teacher's a human, you're a human. We're not designed for everybody to be best friends. And even though your teacher's going to give you a lot of feedback of stop it, you're doing that wrong, keep in mind that's their perspective, that's their expectations, but it doesn't make you a bad human if those things are hard for you.
Another question. I have a lot of teachers now, so I'm guessing secondary, middle school, high school. How do I keep them all straight?
Ooh, like make sense of your schedule and things like that. That makes sense. I would say, just like we do with procrastination or overwhelm, the best way to keep it straight is to put it out of your brain bubble and down onto paper or digitally, if that's your preference. And then start looking at it that way. Because once you get your ideas kind of off the float and anchored down, then you can start thinking about, okay, what are my patterns? Or if I'm having a hard time remembering my schedule, how can I work on memorizing it? Maybe I can strategize that. Or if I don't want to use my brain space for memorizing my schedule, maybe I find a cool way to make a little teeny visual of my schedule and have it in my pocket, and then I just have it as a reference. Do you see how when you unlock your thinking and stop beating yourself up because it's a problem and just start thinking about, what could I do? All these ideas just keep popping up.
And then I don't know, because I know different schools and districts have different policies for phones. But I know most children in secondary have phones. So what I do, even as an adult, because I teach online now. So I have 9 different schedules or timers in my phone for myself as a reminder. But I'm thinking too, maybe because you can add notes to those timers or bells,
And
and
you
maybe
can name them. Yeah,
name them or add a notation to it, maybe.
that's a great idea. Totally. And then,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Because I was just going to say there's another question.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in 7th grade. How do I deal with fidgeting?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. 7th grade, such a juicy age, right? Like, because you're getting cool and you want to be unique, but you also don't want anybody to think that you're different. And that's such a wonky space in your brain. I totally get it. So, how do you deal with fidgeting? Find a way to do it that's under your desk as much as possible and not noisy. And that can be like maybe putting some cool tape on your pencil or pen so you have something to like unroll and roll and unroll and roll, or getting jewelry that's pretty sturdy that you can play with. And even boys, like bracelets or watches or something can work. There's also calm strips, which are like stickers that you can put on that have texture on them. They just had me on their Instagram live a couple weeks ago too. So I can add a link in the Padlet that we have, that will tell you, or Wakelet, and we'll tell you about that in a little bit. So yeah, it's tricky, and you've got to kind of test run your fidgets. And then again, kind of think about, okay, how am I going to make this work where I don't get too much attention, but I also get my needs met?
Okay. I think we're caught up.
Awesome. All right. So if by now it's mid-September, you're probably feeling like all your fun free time has gone away, and we get it. Very much. We get it. So I want to convince you that routines save you time. So routines make studenting easier, and they also save you time. And here's what I mean. When you don't have a routine, when you don't have a flow, let's say, for example, getting started with homework. If that's not something that you could do on automatic, then probably every day you're like, where's my pen? I can't find my pencil. And then you spend a whole bunch of stress and brain juice finding things. Or if it's you don't have a routine yet for packing your backpack, sometimes you're late to school because you couldn't find your shoes and then you realize they were on. Not like that's happened to anybody or anything, but you get the idea. Losing things makes it tricky. Also, when you lose things, sometimes you have to do work twice. No, thank you. That's time that you should not have to pay. And that is why kind of smoothing out a spot in your life, just one spot, is going to help today. There's also something called decision fatigue, which is very legit. And kids who are listening, and teenagers and young adults who are listening, I'm throw a little shade on your parents, so parents forgive me. But have you noticed that right around bedtime, when you guys are kind of sitting down watching your last show for the night, and then your parents start going, and then like their melatonin's kicking in, but not yours yet if you're a teenager, and then they get a little bit like their tone changes just a little bit because they're tired. That's also a smidge of decision fatigue because they had a choice bucket of, sorry, not bucket, budget. Like they had an amount of choices and decisions they could make that day, and they probably overspent their budget and they are done. And that happens in your brain too. So sometimes when you've already burned through like half of your choice budget because you've had so many struggles before you even got to school, then imagine by the middle of the day, you've already spent all your choice dollars. And it's really hard to have a full thinking brain when you have decision fatigue, when you've gone through it and it's kind of exhausted. So that's another reason, if we can make these things go automatic, you don't have to waste brain space on them. They just happen. Dude, you're coming to school with a way fresher brain. That's going to be very helpful. And then lastly, why this matters and why it's worth a little bit of time right now is that stressed brains. So when you're frazzled, when you've had like, I'm late for school, oh my gosh, and you come in with a bunch of big feelings and the stress chemicals of cortisol and adrenaline, they impact your body and your brain to basically make it harder to think. Stressed brains don't think well. And it's really hard to remember things you learn when you're dysregulated, when you're way too far in the emotion land. And there's nothing wrong with emotion land, but this is not a space where you can make good decisions or really remember the things that you're doing. It's a great space for reacting if you're in trouble or if you were in danger. So it serves us. But being up here at school is pretty tricky. So routines help you stay down. They help you stay regulated with your emotions. And I was waiting for you, Angela, because I was like, oh, the chat, but probably you were adding.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay. And if anybody has questions about that piece, jump in. Okay. So far here we are. Smoothing out the parts of your day that repeat. We can call them routines. We can call them flow. Smoothing out the part of your day that repeats helps make studenting easier, helps you save time. I'm about to tell you hack number 3, but I'll make room for a question too.
Okay. So the question is, how do I make creating routines easier?
Oh, you came to the right place. I'm going to teach you how in about 5 slides. So to be continued.
Ooh, I feel the same way for this comment question as well. I'm working really hard and run out of energy after school. Will this help me? It does.
Yes. Ryan, yes, absolutely. It will help you. Because some of the things that are tricky right now smooth out with when you kind of start to realize that things happen on patterns, then your brain doesn't have to spend space in your working memory, kind of like the whiteboard in your brain. It goes into a different part of memory, and that frees up space to have more energy to feel better. So yes. And we feel you. That's why I planned this webinar at this point in the year, because the shine, the fun, the newness of the year has worn off. And now we're all kind of like heavy. This is where we need to start finding easy ways to make it better. That's what we're doing today. Okay, we're going to talk about routine save you brain space, but I want to honor that I just saw another pop up.
Just me.
Oh, just you. You keep psyching me out, girlfriend. No, I'm just kidding. Good questions, you guys. Thank you. Okay, routines save you brain space. So quick refresher, a quick student-friendly way to think about your brain. So you've got long-term memory, which I always put my hand back here, but it's not necessarily only associated with the back of your skull. But if you think about it, it's kind of like far away. This is where you go for information that you've put and you revisit sometimes. So it's like your old yearbook or your baby photo album. Like you check it out, sometimes it's there, it's stuck. And when you bring it back up, that's called retrieval, like a golden retriever. You're bringing it back. Retrieval takes a lot of brain energy. So hang on to that. Then you've got short-term memory, and this is kind of like the waiting room. and your brain's deciding, am I sending it to long-term memory, like the real warehouse, or am I going to have the brain janitors take it out? So that's short-term memory. And then you've got working memory, which is kind of like the whiteboard in your brain. And in this space, you get 3, 4, or 5 things at a time. That's it. And so if your routine is really, really bumpy and you like, oh, shoot, I forgot this, or oh, no, I don't, like you don't know the flow yet, then each one of the steps that you have to take is taking up a spot, which means that if you have a 10-step thing to do, you can really only handle a couple at a time. No wonder it's so tricky. So what we're going to do is teach you ways to make your routine go and take up one brain spot on your whiteboard because you've got it kind of automatic. That is what will save you energy, Mr. Ryan. And that is what we're doing tonight together. So you don't have to worry about like, okay, Sarah, I get it. I kind of want to do this, but how? The how's coming up. So that's funny. I forgot I made this. So here we go. We talked about decision fatigue. We got it. We also talked about chunking your memory. See, this slide is proving I'm not making it up, but I also forgot I had this slide. So what research shows, and I can kind of add in about this, is that when something's automatic, you don't have to activate as much of your brain to do it. So grown-ups, you have this when you drive, or young adult students who drive too. Like sometimes you show up in the driveway and you're like, oh, whoa, how did I get here? Because you were on autopilot, right? Like your brain was just doing the things. And then it was so automatic that you didn't really even think about it. Like your brain could go other places in your mind. We want that for the daily things that you have to do that right now are so sticky. That's the automaticity. And that's where you're like, yeah, I'm making breakfast, I'm packing my lunch, but I'm also thinking about my cool soccer game after school, or I'm mentally rehearsing for my presentation. Like you've just got room to be a fuller human and feel like less like you're just surviving. And if you are a human who came to me through like executive function or ADHD advocacy, you probably have a brain that's susceptible to being stolen by cooler things. And when you have routines and when you have things really automatic, that means that if your brain does get stolen, you've got an easier way to get back on track because your brain's like, oh, I got this. This is automatic. Okay. So all of those are reasons why routines are so awesome. Yeah, after these questions, we're going to talk about, okay, so how do I build them?
Okay, so I have a question that says, will making routines help me balance school and free time? And before you answer, so the comment that I said was yes, only because, not only because, but I teach third grade and I'm all about routine and about organization. And part of it is I put routine is also about prioritizing, because even, starting even at the elementary school, my students want to play, like they want to do their gaming, they want to do, if they're in extracurricular activities, but we also need to prioritize. So that way, if we're doing those things, it's not like you said, Sarah, it's 8 o'clock at night and you're trying to all of a sudden figure out what was it you were supposed to complete today to get ready for tomorrow.
So true. Yeah. And I can add, will this help me with the balance of like, can I get my life back? Because studenting takes so much time. Yeah. Because once it's automatic, and you're going to go piece by piece. So it's not going to be an overnight overhaul. That would be way too tough on your brain. That's superhuman stuff. So I'm going to teach you how to pick one spot right now. But once you get that one spot smoother, you might free up 10, 15 minutes a day. And okay, so 10 minutes on Monday, yeah, that's cool. But after a week, that's over an hour. And after a month, that's over 4 hours. That's over 4.5. And so those little spots of like stickiness and maybe even arguing with parents and kids, that's what we're going to address today by picking one. And then when you get good at that one, pick another one. Just like how you kind of level up in games, we'll do that with your routines. Great question. And I love too that that question kind of came from a couple slides ago, and you were so brave. You were like, hey, my brain thought of this and it was a few minutes later than the slide was on. And so I'm thinking. Sometimes we have like that background programs and then the window opens up and you're like, oh yeah, I was wondering this. So thank you for being brave to model that for everybody. Okay. Told ya. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this easier, and I'm going to give you a couple of ideas about what this could look like. And before I'm not even going to let you read all that because I know how our brains work. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to get so many ideas that you're going to get a big rush of dopamine, and it's going to feel exciting and good. Like when you look through a cookbook, or when you see a really good menu, or a whole bunch of good movies are coming out at once. Like you just get juiced. And then a couple days later, when it's not new anymore, it's not that exciting anymore, your brain's going to be like, deuces, I'm not happy with this. So we're going to make sure that you are seeing a whole bunch of cool ideas, feeling the goodness of like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then picking just a few to get really good at, because that will give your brain the sense of completion that will also give you dopamine.
Okay, so there was another question. I didn't know if there was a Q&A on top of the chat.
Yeah.
So I just noticed this, but I love this because I was actually, so this was also going through my mind as well. But it says, what is the difference between a routine and a habit?
That is a great question. And you know what? I'm not quite sure in this context, it's a big difference. I would say a routine in my brain, when I'm saying routine, I'm thinking of like a couple of actions in a row that kind of help you get something done. So the routine of getting ready for school, the routine of getting ready for bed, the routine of getting started in class, that kind of thing would be a routine, whereas a habit would be kind of a component of that. Like my get ready for bed routine involves the habit of brushing my teeth, but the whole routine is like lots of habits together. And I would offer that if somebody has like a better functional definition, that's totally fine. But either way, we're approaching this with, we're going to find ways to make it neurodiverse brain friendly. And we're going to break it down to the actual steps you take so that if it's a habit or a routine, we're building together.
Yeah, so I have to agree that it's what you said, those actions are the habits that create those routines. Because if you don't have consistent positive habits, it'll be difficult to stick with those routines you're trying to create, which is, you know, prepping your lunch before, right? That's a habit I'm trying to get into the habit of, is prepping my lunch the night before. So I have the routine of taking my lunch with me every day. But yeah, I think that's great. Because those two words were popping in my head too, as you were sharing. I was like, habits and routines. And so we have another question. How can I increase my dopamine levels in a class I don't like, or that might be a bit boring?
Ooh, that is like a whole separate, very in the works webinar. So I'm going to give you a quick answer. And then if you want, my emails on the website and stuff, you can reach out. We can kind of, I almost said dork out. We can nerd out. We can like talk about it deeper. But what I like to tell the people that I coach with is you kind of take your attention, you take your dopamine to the ICU, which is like, you know, where you go when you really need help. Well, when your attention really needs help because you don't like the teacher, or it's boring, or the subject's just not your jam, what do you do? So the ICU stands for interest, connection, and urgency. So, and I'm not going to spend too much time. It's such a good question, but the idea is, how can you increase your interest? So maybe you can find, like, listen for your teacher saying a certain word and track how many times they say the word, or maybe take visual notes where you're drawing what you're learning as well as writing a few words, or maybe you get some movement in class to kind of boost your interest. Connection would be social connection, value to your larger life. So how could this information help me? And then connection to things that you care about. So it kind of crosses over with interest. So unfortunately, a lot of the times I see this with history. Kids are like, oh, no, thank you, history. Ugh. And so we have to think about, okay, what you're learning about things that are old, but where do you see remnants of these things in today? And how can you kind of connect that to real life? This is such a fast answer. I apologize. And then the last part is urgency, which ironically, I'm like trying to urgently answer this so we can have time to work on our stuff. But the idea is, when you're feeling really bored, you're having a hard time getting started, the urgency component is kind of setting a timer. So you play beat the clock, or like giving yourself little breaks if it's easy for you to re-engage, or giving yourself a fake deadline of a couple days ahead of time so that you feel the pressure and you can kind of get going. All of those things will mess with your focus juice in your brain to help you feel more motivated and get engaged. But you're absolutely right in identifying that boredom definitely is a student issue. I mean, it's a real life issue for everybody, but especially for students, because you're supposed to be like a perfect learner 6 or 8 hours a day. It's really humanly impossible. And especially if you have a brain with some like already allergies to boredom, like ADHD or autism, or something that you haven't even named, but you know is a little like neurodivergent. Extra tricky. So thank you for the good question. Email me if that was not enough. And I'm sorry for talking so quickly. Okay, what is happening? Okay, so I lost my ability to change the slide. So I'm going to give the preview again. We're going to talk about end the day routines, begin the day routines, because those are two tricky spots for most humans. And then I'm going to teach you how, if you don't want to work on those two options, how you can apply step by step to make a routine or your flow for the part where you feel like you're losing brain space or losing time. And this will not go perfectly. You will love some ideas. You will think that they will work, and then they'll be wonky. And that doesn't mean that anything went wrong. That means that you're human, and maybe your psychic abilities are a little dicey. And okay, so when it doesn't go perfectly, you know what? It might have gone this much better. And tomorrow it'll be this much better. And then pretty soon you got it. So it's really tricky when we work on brain stuff because we can't see it. We think like, oh, I'll apply this magic strategy and it'll just overnight. Don't do that to yourself. So as you're looking at these, if these don't work right away, use it as detective moment to see what did go right. How could I change this up just a little bit to make it even better for me? Okay. If you are a person who wants to work on your end of the day routine, if you're someone who wants to just smooth out the nighttime stuff because, whew, it is a train wreck and you think you're getting ready for bed and then it's 2 hours later before you finally hit the pillow, this is a spot where you can work on it. So a couple of things that you can plan to do, and I'll show you how to make these flow, would be think about parking the things that you're going to need tomorrow. So for example, you park your phone, if you have a phone yet, you park your phone every single night in the spot where you charge it. You can do the same thing for important things like your shoes, like your backpack, like glasses if you wear them, like your water bottle. Park your things at night. You're like, well, wait a minute. I thought this was trying to help me get ready for bed. What the heck? But here's the deal. You're spending the rest of today's thinking budget getting ready for tomorrow. And that's like 3 or 4 extra thinking dollars that you have available tomorrow because you did them tonight. So it seems funny to be like, Sarah, you're starting with end the day routine. But if you had only one spot, and I'm going to encourage you to pick only one spot to work on, this would be it, end the day routine, because it gets you ready for a better day the next day. The question about habit was really powerful because this kind of speaks, the next part speaks to this. But if you're already really good at one piece of your flow, like a lot of us are pretty automatic about brushing our teeth. And if you're not, that's okay. That's a spot where you can work on. But if you're already pretty automatic about brushing your teeth, then you can stack on, you can make your brain connect. When I brush my teeth, I do this new habit. And that takes advantage of something that's already automatic that happens for you. You just stack it on. Like maybe you put, like Angela was saying, you could put a reminder on your phone that you see every day so that when you interact with your phone, which is pretty automatic, you also get the reminder to do this new habit. And then pretty soon your brain's like, oh, I got it. You don't need the reminder anymore through practice. And again, we kind of touched on this with parking your things, but my challenge for you, if you work on the end the day routine with us, think of the 3 things you're going to do for future you tonight, so that future you tomorrow is like, thank you, past me. This is great. And that could be pick out your clothes. That could be get your soccer bag packed. That could be pack your lunch. Anything that helps you have a better flow in the morning. Because like a couple of you identified in the chat, school's exhausting. And whatever we can do to save our energy and then maybe have some juice at the end of the day for fun, let's do it. And then just to add on to and kind of start getting your brain thinking about, okay, what does this actually look like? A lot of brains with executive function needs have a little bit of a lot of a tricky time figuring out, okay, I can know the process, but how do I know what the steps are? Like it just kind of stays fuzzy sometimes. How do you chunk something into pieces? How do you know where to start? And a lot of brains find that if they can kind of make the movie in their mind of what the routine looks like, they can kind of go through it a little bit and then start taking some notes. Eventually, what they find is that as they're making their mental movie, or we could even call it your morning movie that you do at night, each scene becomes a step. And that can help you. I'm going to teach you another way with comics too in just a bit. So if you choose end the day routine to work on this week, this weekend, whatever you choose, you can start visualizing, like making your morning movie at night as a rehearsal to get ready for the next day. And I put a couple of questions that you can ask your own brain if you're a college student, or if you're a parent, you can kind of ask your kid, like, what do you see in your backpack when it's all the way packed? Or what do you see yourself needing in your first class? And all those things help beef up your executive function, but not in like a worksheet kind of way. You're just thinking about your day. I'm pausing for water, but also questions. So interrupt me if you need to.
No questions yet. Okay. But I just shared, one routine, trying to get a routine at night to help me get out of the door faster in the morning. And so preparing at night definitely helps my morning run smoother, at least for me, because that was one of my biggest struggles as an adult, is, making sure I'm out the door on time and making sure that, like you had mentioned previously, I'm not frazzled when I'm getting to work, getting to school.
Right. Because if you think about it, if you've ever had like a scary moment and your body kind of shakes afterwards, that's the adrenaline coming out of you. You have equal, if not more powerful things going on in your brain. And although your brain doesn't physically shake, you can kind of use that metaphor to think, whoa, that was an intense experience. It takes some time to come down. And if you're just really frazzled all the way up to the bell, and then the teacher's like, what's wrong with you? And it just escalates you back up. It's a really rough way to start the day. That's why we're working on this right now.
And I'm sure, as teachers, we know, right? And I'm sure students notice those days when their teacher comes in and the day feels planned and ready versus those days that may not run as smooth, because we all feel it. There's an energy, right? And so somebody had asked at night, should I park my shoes and backpack? And I just responded, well, I park my shoes, my keys, my work bag. For me, I have a spot at the front door. And so I make sure, like what you were saying, Sarah, if there's one thing in particular I need to connect to, like if I know I need my keys in the morning, I'm going to put my work bag by my keys. Because I've left my laptop at home, my work device sometimes because I wasn't prepared.
Oh my gosh. Are you saying that teachers are humans?
Yeah.
Ew.
A little bit.
And I switched the slide not to cut you off, but to reinforce, because you're kind of like getting onto like, oh, okay, so maybe I can use some physical prompts. So what Angela was talking about was kind of putting stuff in her own way where she needed it. That's a physical prompt. And so if I know my husband hangs his mask right on top of his keys. That's his like combo. He knows he's not gonna, most of the days, not gonna leave the house without the keys in his hand. And so that was his kind of connection moment. And it's a physical prompt. So what a physical prompt is, it could be a visual like a sticky note, or it could be the actual thing. And you just put it in your own way so that you have to interact with it. And that makes it unforgettable. So instead of having to go find it or trying to like ask your brain to take up one of the whiteboard spots to remember it, instead, it's just a thing. It's right there. It's part of your flow. Make sure we're good. Awesome. Okay. All right. I imagine when I switched the slide, some of you were like, there's poop there. Why is there poop there? It's very on brand for wacky Kesty. So if you know me, that is very true. And it's because it's an easy way to remember that please don't poop on yourself. Don't tell yourself you should, because here's where one of the bumps in the road when you're working on a routine, you might have a voice in your brain that says, you shouldn't need help with this. You should be able to do this. This shouldn't be so hard. And if you're hearing some of those shouldy thoughts, that's when you say, Sarah told me not to, should. This is not okay. And actually, it is okay, because human brains are going to criticize themselves, but say, oh, hello, Sarah told me you would be here, but you're not welcome. Toodles. Okay. Because the idea is this. Everybody uses help like this. Everybody. Your most famous people that you look up to use lists, or they hire people to do things like this for them. Humans don't function without this kind of stuff. So if you live in a household where nobody else needs like a jump list to get ready in the day, but you do, cool, you figured out what you need. Chances are the other people who live with you need things that you don't. It just feels really raw and yucky to need help sometimes. But when you notice that coming up in your brain, you can say hello to it and be like, yeah, I've heard those thoughts before, but this time they're not going to take over, because there is no should in what a brain needs. Sometimes, guys, sometimes you'll need the list forever. sometimes, like, I have a close the day list that I have used for, I don't know, several years, and it's still a great anchor. Like, when I have a tired brain, I look back at it, even though it's pretty automatic. So it's okay to need any of these things outside of your brain. Because again, when you get them automatic, whether it's by a list, a prompt, or any of the things we're going to talk about, when they're automatic, you have more brain space, you have more time for fun, and it just feels smoother.
Okay, so I recently started working out with my dad in the summertime at a gym, but now with my school and him working night shift, how should I find space to work out more?
Ooh, like working out with dad is not an option anymore.
It
Sounds
may
like.
not be. Between the shift of coming home from school, I'm thinking, and him leaving for work, there's probably not a lot
Got
of time in
it.
between.
Okay. Without getting too deep in the weeds with specifics, and again, open invitation to email me. Like Meg knows I follow up, right, Meg? um, I think it really helps when you have this kind of like nagging, I really have this schedule problem, and it just kind of grows in your brain. Do like we do, concretize, write it down, make it visual, chunk out your time and see where's my time going and where are the overlaps where dad and I don't have things planned that maybe we could meet up at the gym. And where are the spots where I have some flexibility in like homework or after school activities that maybe I could bravely go to the gym on my own. But trying to do all the mental gymnastics in your brain is going to be really hard. So I would say work on concretizing it, get it down on paper, and then use some of these routines to free up some time. And that was a super quick answer and a really, really good question. Okay, so we talked about end the day routines, kind of paying it forward for future you. And then how do you get out of the house? And I've got to honor too that, you know what? Your brain at this point might be fighting you a little bit because you're very smart and studenting is really tricky. So here you are having to show up at this place where, man, it's really invalidating. It doesn't feel great to be here. So of course your brain's going to stop giving you interest chemicals because it's a hard thing to do. So you're already kind of fighting some of that. How do we make it smoother? Well, just like we were talking about before, you can use checklists. There is no shame in the help game. And I'm going to show you how to know what to write on those checklists in a second. So you're like, oh, Sarah, of course a checklist, but like, how am I going to know what to put on it? And how am I going to remember to do it? And the thing is, there's no do of in terms of do it right or wrong. If you just look at the checklist and visually go through it and don't check it off and that works for you, awesome. If you've got like the first 3 or 4 steps pretty automatic and it's just the last little bit that you need to like, oh yeah, got to go do that. Great. So the idea is you don't have to do it right, but it's a visual just in case your brain's having a wonky morning or just in case something's off with your schedule or it's just an anchor for busy brains. So we've got that. We've got those physical prompts, if you remember, which are just like putting your backpack by the front door or making your parking spot by the door that you leave in the morning. So you're like, oh yeah, everything's right here. Zoom, 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 got it. You can also ask yourself or parents who are watching, ask your kids kind of, what do I need? What do I need for school? What do I need on my body? What do I need for sports? And one of the ways I like to do it as like kind of a go anywhere strategy is to visualize yourself head to toe, and you can even touch head to toe and think about what you need. It's a really good strategy for packing for trips too. And I literally still do this at 39 when I pack for trips. So I'll be like, okay, what do I need for my head? Okay, I need hair stuff. I need, you know what I mean? And if it's packing for sports, it would be like, okay, oh yeah, I need my helmet. I need my mouth gear. I need, is that what you call it? Clearly not a sports girl. Oh, so sorry if some of my people that I love and support are football players, so I'm sorry. But point is, you can use your body as a point of reference to kind of mental checklist through, okay, what do I need in my hand? What do I need for my stomach? Oh yeah, snacks. Oh yeah, water, that kind of thing. And then you can do something that a fabulous human that I know in Alabama does, which is make acronyms. So we work together on like kind of making the routine, the like stacks of habits, the flow of how do you stay on top of like communication that's kind of boring. So checking your online classroom stuff. This is a college example. Or checking email or looking at the calendar. Like these are great tools, but if it's not in your routine to actually look at them, you know, it's just like, oh, I bought another planner and didn't use it. So how do you make it like stick in your brain? And this person really super loves history. And so we thought of the acronym BCE because BCE is like a timestamp for before Common Era. And the B stands for Blackboard, the online system. C stands for calendar. E stands for email. And so he has the acronym BCE a couple places in his house and a reminder on his phone. And when it pops up, he's like, oh yeah, BCE. And then he goes and does it. And check this out. That used to take up 3 brain spots or 3 spots in his brain whiteboard. We got it down to 1. And pretty soon it will just become part of the flow of how he does things. And it may only just take like a reminder once in a while when his brain is tired, but he'll keep the reminders. So that's what I mean about making an acronym. Back when we were kind of still very much in pandemic mode, a lot of kids were having a hard time transitioning to remember to bring sanitizer, water, and masks. So we made the song mask, water, sanitize, sanitize. And although it's irritating, right? Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, it also sticks. And so that was a really easy way to kind of like, da, 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 oh yeah. And you don't even have to sing the whole thing, but it's brain friendly ways to smooth out the things that are kind of tricky to remember.
One of the participants shared that they use Google Keep as a digital checklist. And I just said, yeah, Google Keep is amazing because also they shared because you can color code items. You can add check boxes, like Christmas gifts, appointments. You can add any type of Google document or PDF. You can add links to websites if you were doing a research project. But yeah, Google Keep, you can, and then what's great about it, if you are a Google person, Google Keep will keep you connected to your phone with the same checklist like on any other device, whether it's your tablet or your Chromebook, and then you can have your checklist everywhere. And I believe you can share checklists.
You can collaborate. Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. So yeah, so like parent and student or child can share even notifications or checklists too.
Unless you're a teenager and that's irritating.
Well. True.
I'm visualizing like the teenager shoulders going up, like mom, don't even think about it. Individualize it. If it doesn't work.
Unless it's a Christmas list, right?
Then you want to know. That's funny. And I appreciate you sharing that, Paula. And thank you for the bravery of kind of, and that collaborative spirit. I started a Christmas list too, because it's so nice to like, when you get inspired, instead of relying on this faulty factory that we think is a warehouse, instead of relying on our brains to remember, dude, outsource that stuff, get it into somewhere that actually will remember for you. And then you've got clear whiteboard space to do some thinking. So start the day routine could be another spot where you work on it, or you can kind of blend a little bit of end the day and start the day, but keep the questions coming. And I'm going to move to So how do we do this? We talked a little bit about the scenes being the steps. I also want to invite you to try to make a comic of it if you wanted to. And if you're older and you're like, gross, Sarah, do not make me do children things. Don't worry. I got some like less kiddish stuff for you, but I will offer you too that it's private right now. Nobody around to see you. And if comics still kind of juice your brain, go for it. There's no shame in the fun game. So that's out there. But as you're kind of like grabbing some paper, starting to think about what am I going to do? What am I going to work on? The questions you can ask yourself to sort of build that self-awareness and really start seeing your steps would be, what do you see around you? So in the scene, what do you imagine around you? Where are you? Because that kind of becomes the things that you need. How do things flow? So what tells you that it's time to get going? Or what made your brain realize, oh, I need to do this thing? That becomes kind of gets you going on the steps. And I will tell you that this might come out of your brain way out of order. A lot of the times when I work with kids on like breaking tasks down, they'll tell me the middle step and walk me all the way through to the end, and then have that, oh yeah, moment where they're like, oh yeah, I guess I needed to make my slides for my slide presentation that I now said, walked you through the steps to the end. Or, oh yeah, I guess I probably have to research. And that's totally okay. If you have a brain with ADHD or autism, chances are time's a little bit wonky for you too. And it's all right if it comes out of order, because this is going to be a messy first draft. And then you can go back and say, actually, this happens first. You get some times to kind of figure it out. Okay. So ignore the EF routines, because actually that will take you to an empty or a Google Drive folder that we will have. If you're watching the recording, it will be accurate. But if you're live right now, we're going to put links in the chat and you have options. So as we are grabbing your document to work on, there's an option for upper elementary, middle school students, and then high school and college students. And there's no rule that says if you're in middle school, you can't preview the high school document and see if there's something valuable there for you. But I've tailored them to be more appropriate for each kind of style of brain where you are right now. So Angela put in the chat the links to the docs, and it will prompt you very first thing, and it'll say make a copy. And you just click the button and that becomes yours. I can't see it. Angela can't see it. It is yours. Okay. So the links are in the chat. Go ahead and grab them. Upper elementary and high school, college. That's right. And it'll save in your Google Drive as well. And as you do that, I want to help you prioritize, because like I've mentioned probably 6,000 times by now, you can't fix everything. You can't hack everything all at once. I wish we could, but we have human brains and that's just not the way it goes. So we're going to pick one tricky spot that you want to work on. And I gave you the, yeah.
Sorry. Let me see. If I have access, I might be able to do it. Let me check really quick. Oh yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to make an adjustment really quick. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So for my human brain is off. Okay.
Sorry.
No. This is, I invited it, right? And now I have to model that sometimes we get distracted and then we have to think backwards, and I got it. So here we go. I gave you the example of start the day and end the day routines, but you could think about, what's my routine for getting ready in class? What does my teacher always kind of gripe at me about that like other kids just seem to magically get, and I haven't found that yet? Or what's my routine for making a meal? Maybe I get so overwhelmed by the process of cooking that I'm like, forget it, I won't eat. Or I'm just going to eat a bag of chips because that's what's easy. Okay. So there's loads of spots where you can kind of think about where am I losing time? Where am I feeling frustrated? Where am I using up a whole bunch of brain space? And then when you do find that spot, or sorry, if you're having a hard time finding that spot, kind of check out some of these questions to see what you want to work on. Okay. It works. Awesome. So the copy one didn't work.
I just adjusted one piece of the link. I think the piece that I adjusted was just not in the right spot, maybe. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and really look at it. But the second time I shared this one.
It worked.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you guys. Like that is a great model of self-advocacy. You were like, I'm not going to sit back while she's teaching us to do this. I need this stuff. Awesome job. All right. As we start kind of working on this together, I really hounded this pick only one routine, didn't I? I also want to remind you that, you know what, automatic is going to look different for everybody. And like we said before, you may need a couple of reminders sometimes. Totally okay. And if you do and that works for you and you get back some time and you get lower stress, that's a win in my book. And if you're a teenager that's kind of worried about like, oh my gosh, what if somebody else sees this? There's super low key ways to do this. So if you're thinking about a routine at school, but you don't want people to see that you like have a list or something lame, you can kind of hide it inside the inside of your planner. You can put it on your phone or your device at school if they're allowed. Don't be sneaking your phone because Sarah told you. Don't do that. There's lots of kind of ways to make it stealth. And I can offer you, although you won't believe me until you're an old lady like I am, other people are struggling just like you are. And chances are they're not judging you. Feels like it, but there is some space to just kind of own it and be you and do what you need to do. And that grows over time. Okay. You're starting to open the planning sheets. You might be looking at it and going, oh, woo, God, no, thank you. This looks like homework. Okay. Allow that feeling because it is kind of a boring looking document. That's okay. It's all right to look at it and have your brain at first be like, I'm protesting. No, thank you. And you can say, oh, hey, brain. Hi. Sarah told me you would protest because this doesn't look like fun, but you know what? This is worth it. Okay. And there are ways to kind of tone down, like convince your brain that it's not so bad. So here's a couple ways. When you look at this or any work that you're presented with and your initial, like I've even seen kids kind of back up, like it's like poison or it smells bad or something. Like it's a very real response. If you get that, that's okay. Again, you can say like, oh, hi, Sarah told me you'd be here. And then you can kick in with strategies. So could you have a parent or friend interview you and take notes on your answers? It gets the planning sheet done, but you don't have to kind of have the visual overwhelm. Maybe you're somebody that processes out loud better anyway. Great. You can have that. Or if you're like, I kind of want to do this privately, you can use some of the technology pieces that will read it to you and you can speak your answers so that it doesn't feel so homeworky because it feels more like a conversation than typing. You can also use a strategy called masking where you cover up, you use like any paper or book or anything you have to like not see anything but the question that you need to do. And sometimes it will calm your brain down where you can almost like feel your shoulders come down. It's wild. So that's another way. Just you can do this a lot with math too. Just cover everything except the problem you're working on and let your brain have peace. Like there's not that visual noise. That can help a lot. And then again, like I said, you can kind of be like, oh, overwhelm, you're here. And you don't have to play with overwhelm. You don't have to let them be the boss. You can just say, yeah, I knew you were coming. Easier said than done. Okay. How are the documents going? Oh, good. Polly, you got the new links. Okay. Awesome. So much for test running it, huh? Angela and I spent so long trying these out and then still human
Well,
moment.
that's what's so interesting. 'Cause they opened for me, right? And that's when you
Mhm.
don't know until somebody else tries it.
I know, I know. We even like tried out the test webinar too, but thank you for letting us be human, everybody. Okay. I'm going to, whoops, keep it right here for a sec and let you kind of work on the docs. And if you want to unmute or add in the chat anything as you're looking at the questions. Again, this is just for you to be able to elevate your thinking and really start planning. Okay, what are the components I need to put into my routine? And then take it to either the movie, the list, or the comic strip and just show yourself what it could look like and what are the strategies that you're going to use in each spot. And we'll go maybe like 5 minutes just checking out the docs. If you don't have it yet, now is your time.
So I have a question. It says, do you have any tips on coming home from school in a calmer way? I'm using a lot of brain power at school and I'm exhausted when I get home. This is where I think I need help, but I don't know how to start.
Do you mean, Meg, do you mean starting homework? Or do you mean just regulating after a long, long day?
Regulating after a long day.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is kind of fun. So, Ryan, you get to decide like what works for my body, what helps me calm down. So you get to kind of be a self-detective. I know somebody that calls it a self-scientist, and you get to try it out. So some people like feeling squeezed, like maybe by a weighted blanket. That could be something for you. Some people like talking and kind of getting out their day just like blah, 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 blah. That could be something that works. There's so many different things. So I'm going to challenge you to start kind of like strategy shopping. What works for my body and really tune into your body first, because that's going to, once you calm that down, you'll be able to get back into your brain and have it more available for thinking.
Yeah, because it was also mentioned that as of like today, right now, homework hasn't even been started yet due to not being able to, I guess, come down or feel calm enough to be able to start those things.
For sure. And then, that's where we can kind of lean into advocacy. That's why I made the IEP OMG show is, you know what, daily homework might be too much to ask of somebody who just is adjusting. And so maybe we give extended time where you've got like maybe half a day on Saturday to have that be your homework time. And then you can turn in your homework later than others, but still not late where you lose points. Because what we know for sure is that if you're forcing your body and your brain to do these things because you're so exhausted or dysregulated, it's only going to be for collecting points and making your teacher happy, but it's sacrificing you and it's not going to stick in your learning. Which I know is easier said than done, because then you're like, well, what do I do about my grade? And that's where we can kind of lean into 504s and IEPs to make you not lose points for things like that.
And then another participant shared, she says, same for us. My son comes back from school and just wants to turn on the TV.
Yeah. Okay. And I wonder how much TV time we can allow as kind of a transition. I mean, it makes sense that if you're coping and you're masking all day, you are done. And so, yeah, we could definitely lean into routines to kind of free up brain space. And there's so much available there. But there's also like, what if we added rest to the routine? And then what if we address the transition from rest back to a little bit of homework as the routine that we're going to work on? Like, what does that look like? What do you need? So just as an example, I'm sort of riffing here, but if we were working on the TV to back to work transition, because we're going to put rest as part of our routine, it might look like, okay, how will you remember, or how will you know when it's time to get to work? How many reminders and when will they be set? Where do you plan to work? So that's part of the transition, is physically moving off of the couch. That's part of the routine. Like, I watch my show, then I go to my room. So do you see how that's kind of the scenes, and then it's building the steps? Once I'm in my room, I have the routine of opening Google Classroom and picking a warm-up item. Maybe that's your routine. So it's like something that's like easy points. I'm just going to jam it out. Or maybe you're the type of person that's like, hey, my routine is to eat the assignment that's worth the most points first. And then if I have time, do the rest. There's lots of different ways to approach it. But what I hope that you appreciate about this process is that that's a routine. You can add rest into your routine and then routinize the transition out of rest back into a little bit of homework time.
And then another question before I go back to a comment, because I'm not skipping the comment, but this, I want to keep on what we're speaking about. But it says, and this is kind of big, how do you start a routine when every day your schedule is different? We homeschool and my son receives services from his charter school.
Ooh, that is tricky, isn't it? And I would say, let's explore your perspective on what routine is, because I feel like you're locking routine, you're marrying routine and time, and they don't have to be married. So think about, I just got a divorce. Think about weekend mornings versus weekday mornings. For most people who maybe have like a 5-day-a-week work schedule, your mornings on work days, your routine might be similar, like breakfast, coffee, getting ready, getting dressed. So the routine might be similar, but it may happen at very different times, right? Like, you've got your 6 a.m. wake up on work days, if you're lucky. And maybe you've got like a 9 a.m. wake up on weekends, and it's still kind of the same routine. So I would challenge you to kind of lift away the part that really sticks the routine to time and think about, okay, where can I find little repetitions in my day that could be kind of mini routines? So I imagine you prepare for a lunch every day, or like if you're homeschooling, or you've got the beginning lessons, that could be part of a routine. So you can kind of unlock your thinking and play with routines. And maybe it's a shorter time span, but then you've got the flexibility of, okay, if my math lesson happens at 3 p.m., I know my routine. And if it happens at noon, I know my routine. Same routine, just different time. I hope that makes sense.
And then I also just kind of put maybe, because I don't know how, if every day is literally different, or maybe there's, maybe one Monday, Wednesday, Friday are a little bit similar. So you would have, like you were saying, like set routines for those particular days. And then like Tuesday, Thursday would have their particular routines, kind of chunking a little bit.
That's absolutely true. They're like, I think sometimes when when it's kind of up in our head clouds, when we put it on paper, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, this isn't as random as I thought. Maybe there's spots where I can do it. So it just allows your brain to kind of take a view from the balcony and see how you're thinking about things. And sometimes that will illuminate strategies just right there.
Yeah, it reminds me of like when I first started attending college, I would have, Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, maybe a Tuesday, Thursday. So my schedule was not the same daily, but then I had work. So I literally, like you said, I would like make my columns Monday, Tuesday, and then I kind of course it out just to kind of see, okay, what are these good days going to look like and which days are similar where, those routines, I can apply those routines to, because
Mhm.
what I would do on Monday probably wouldn't look the same as Tuesday.
Totally. And I think a little bit we're overlapping with schedules, so be careful with that. Don't assign too tight of time frames as you're trying to work on routines. Definitely you can do like estimations and all that, but don't be angry with yourself if you thought your routine would take 5 minutes and it takes
Right.
10. We're learning. So, um, right quick before we go, my friends, and maybe I'm hearing a lot of good schedule questions. Maybe that's something to tap into. Okay. With any strategy, it is super important to remember that you are human and you're going to have some wonky moments. We all do. So, as you're putting your routine in place and you're thinking about either the mind movie or the list or the comic strip or whatever cool idea you come up with to make your routine really smooth, I also want to challenge you to think about how can you put it in your own way? How can you make this routine unavoidable? Because you have made everything obvious and visual prompts and all those physical prompts, all those kind of things. You also will not memorize this. So it's going to feel fun tonight. You're going to feel all juiced. And then a couple days later, you'd be like, oh yeah, I forgot. So make sure you include reminders and notifications because human brains get distracted and our whiteboards get erased, all that kind of stuff. Also, sometimes, and I know somebody shared about sticky notes and stuff, sometimes we'll like kind of unsee the things that are in our environment for too long. So if you've got a visual prompt like BCE, like Blackboard, calendar, email, and then it's worked for a little bit and then all of a sudden it stops working, your brain's not broken. It's just that your brain scans the environment for new things and reacts to new things. And that's not new anymore. So you can just plan in a couple weeks, I'm going to change where the sticky note goes, or I'm going to add glitter, or I'm going to change the look of it, whatever it is to kind of reboot your brain's interest. And then as you're working on this, make sure that you're thinking about brain stealers and derailers. So where are the potential spots where like your video game character could like get accidentally knocked off track? Or, where are the spots where it's tempting because you're walking through the living room and somebody's watching TV and you just kind of want to plop down? Where are those like vulnerabilities, and plan around those because it's real life and you're not going to have full control of the environment. So you got to kind of plan for like, where's my brain susceptible to fall out of the plan? And how do I make sure that I'm on track enough with my routine to get it there? That's really for anything, but in the context now, it's for routines.
Okay, so I have a few comments. That this has been a great webinar that she saw and registered for just after you started it, and it'll be great for her 15-year-old to listen. And the explanation of the scheduling routines of the mixed days, that made sense. The help and explanation definitely helped and made sense. Also, thank you for validating that studenting is hard. This takes a lot of effort for my son, and this is not often validated. It is appreciated and noticed. And again, great ideas. Sometimes I forget to use Google Keep, except for a few of them. I like the idea of making it new again, and that will be great for my kids.
Be great for you too, right? We all kind of like stop noticing the things that are just kind of routine, and it's nice to just be refreshed. That's why food tastes better on vacation. Even if it's not better, it tastes better because you're somewhere else. Okay, my loves, I will stick around if there are any more questions. Oh, we do have, if you are not part of our crew yet. We have a way to stay connected by joining the mailing list, and this will have in a couple weeks I'm at a parent summit in New Zealand. I'm speaking at the CHAD conference. We have super cool news about Attitude magazine, all kinds of good stuff going on. And I send loads of freebies and stuff like that. So never spam, but if you wanted to join our team, that's how to do so. And then on sarahkesty.com has my email as well if you wanted to reach out afterwards. Good gravy. Tell them about the Wakelet. I'm the worst. I'm sorry.
So I just put a link. It's called a Wakelet, but what it does is just houses a bunch of resources at one time. So all the resources that I've been sharing in the chat box will also be located in the Wakelet. So if you just click on it, it will take you to all the great links and templates that Sarah created and shared in the Wakelet. So you'll always have that with you, or to just kind of go back to if you wanted. We can also add the links to the YouTube videos as well.
That's a great idea. Yeah. So we've got to sign up, the 2 podcasts, calm strips, a back to school letter if you were here for that. And if not, you got that. And then the 2 planning resources right here. All good stuff, my friends, and our faces. So you can't forget. All right. I imagine you don't have your routine all the way done, although you've started it. So as we say goodbye, I want to have a challenge for you to make a plan and a promise. So these are really good coaching questions. If you wanted to steal them, please do. This can help you coach your own brain or your kid. But the idea is when will you finish XYZ? So today it's when will you finish your routines? And if the answer is later, don't accept that. Keep pushing for, okay, when, what day, what time? The logical follow-up to that is then, okay, how will you remind yourself? How will you remember? What's your plan for remembering and reminding your very busy brain? And then where will you post them? So where will you put your routines outside of your brain so that you've got a good sense of what your flow is going to look like? All right, and I'll hang for a few if there are questions, and otherwise you are free to go, you fabulous students. Thank you for your time. It was wonderful having everybody.